After years and years of just turmoil, it feels like the Joel Embiid story in Philadelphia has reached a bitter conclusion.
Embiid's body is giving up on him. Paul George looks very old, and overall, it feels like the Sixers have the worst future in the NBA.
Let's talk about how, or I guess if, this team can save themselves from the terrible situation they're currently in. I don't know how to start this by anything other than saying, okay. I am sad. I am not having a good time right now because as you saw by the intro, we're here to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers and their suddenly horrible future. And more importantly, we're here to talk about what feels like the end of the Joel Embiid era as a superstar. It feels like it's just straight up come to a conclusion.
Yeah. Suddenly horrible. It's more like we've just seen this like giant black cloud on the horizon for a while, in my opinion, at least. And then now it's like, oh shit, the storm, we're here. Now
now we're all wet. Yeah. Now we're all soaking wet.
We're all wet. God damn it. My phone's in my pocket. Guys, are you serious?
We're at the point now, it feels like we need to put the whole 76ers organization in rice. It feels like we've hit the point where lots of factors have compounded with the spark that started this humongous fire being Joel Embiid's health. Mm-hmm. And, for his whole career, the story of Joel Embiid's career has been injuries and how we can cope with that, whether that's currently preventing him from succeeding or not. And now we're at the point where it feels like the injuries have stacked up in a point that now they're so insane that they'll just be insane forever. We'll never get a healthy Joel Embiid ever again. So we got to sit here and talk about what this means for the 76ers future, what this means for Joel Embiid, for Paul George, for Tyrese Maxey, everybody. Mm-hmm. Can they find a way to survive this and pivot to a new generation? Are they just straight up screwed? Just get all of our thoughts about all things 76ers.
Hey, okay. I mean, talk about a basketball. I really haven't even thought about them because it's just been so depressing. But like once you take a step back and like look at everything, like you don't even get the Jared McCain part of it. You can't even have that. Like it was like, oh, yippee, he's dancing and he's like the best rookie, and even he gets a knee injury.
Fell off immediately.
And so it's tough for Embiid. When we talk about Embiid and injuries and how we've gotten to a point where it feels like they're just going to be crazy forever, I do feel like we've been on this gradient of sorts, like slowly increasing, where year by year the kind of scenario that you have to tell yourself about Joel Embiid getting 4 healthy playoff series becomes a little more convoluted, where it's like, okay, he's one of the best players on the planet. He could go like try to win MVP, but we could like reserve him in important moments, and we could rest him for the playoffs, and he'll be ready to go. Okay, well, he like 50 games is asking a lot. Now we just need to fully be ready for the playoffs at the cost of like seeding or anything else. And now it's at the point where it's like, even if we could just magically teleport this Sixers team into the postseason, like they did not have to play another basketball game, it feels extremely unrealistic to expect Embiid to be able to play like 16 consecutive games. Even like if they slept
16 is a huge number.
If they slept every single round, it would still be like, Embiid's probably gonna miss like 3 of those. And so it's a very tough situation.
You said it's been hard to pay attention to basketball wise this year because it's been so desolate. Correct. So for those who have not been paying attention to the 76ers, know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. They are currently in what I like to call the nightmare scenario. Every team has a range of outcomes for every season, right? All the factors in play that are going to define your season, the important players, the important aspects of your team, personnel, whatever. They all have some part in the context that will define the success you have or don't have. Mm-hmm. Essentially, every element that could have gone wrong has gone wrong for them this season. Yeah. They currently are 20-37, sitting in the 12th seed. Embiid has missed 38 games. Jared McCain tore his MCL. Paul George, what do I say? On this graphic, I put he is #cooked. Well, that's about the best way to describe it.
Like when you say nightmare scenario, if you asked like a Sixers fan their nightmare scenario, it would probably be like, oh, Paul George is like worse than Tobias Harris. That's what would happen. Like we just need him to be better than Tobias Harris. And now they're looking like 6 spots up in the standings, and Tobias Harris is averaging like 20 points per game and a 7-game win streak for the Pistons. And it's like, yo, if we got that out of Paul George, like we might really be cooking with something. And so nightmare is a very good way to describe it.
And it's a nightmare because they gave him a 4-year contract, and it was really their all-in move is we're going to go to Paul George, and he's going to be the guy to bring this team together. And maybe if Joel Embiid had a terrible season and Paul George gave you the production you expected, he could help you weather the storm. That was kind of the idea of bringing this guy to be the third star.
Third store. Holy shit.
And he also looks equally hobbled and equally negative of an asset long term. So they're at the point now where they have their two highest paid players are potentially the two worst contracts in the NBA. That is an incredibly hard place to build a team from. Their books are crying tears every day. That just even Joel Embiid alone being cooked is a problem. You tie Joel Embiid's cookedness to Paul George for 3 more full seasons.
Yes.
This is a horrible situation, and that came out of nowhere.
Yeah. It was just like, I don't know. When they gave Paul George the contract, I looked at like his Clippers run last year and was like, oh, okay, this is a guy who was an MVP finalist at points.
The signs were there, the slowdown. It wasn't completely out of nowhere.
Yeah. Like it was just a guy who was doing more and more, playing a style of basketball that while it wasn't terrible, I was not super comfortable being like, that's the guy who's going to tide us over when Embiid misses 35 games, which was like the idealized scenario heading into this season, was that he's just going to play when he can, and Paul George is going to be like an all NBA level guy in this huge floor raising role. That's why we're paying him $50 million a year until he's 38 years old. And immediately you don't get like a fake run of that immediately.
Yeah,
and part of it's injury. His knee was going the wrong direction in summer league, and it's really all been downhill from there. But even contextualizing it with injury, you have not gotten anything out of Paul George that would make you remotely comfortable with the contract that you gave him.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a lot about what they can do about this terrible situation, money-wise, player-wise, who they build around going forward. We're going to talk about all of that as we go.
But I think there's a lot of stuff they could do. They've got a lot of avenues to explore. They could wiggle their way out of
flexible.
This. Yeah.
A lot of versatility in the road they can go down. But before we do that, let's kind of chronicle how we got here. I think that's important to really set the table and fully explain to people what parts of this came out of nowhere and are bad luck, and what parts of this either you could see coming or they are directly responsible for their own downfall.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
So to do the entire timeline it probably could be its own video, and how in the off season maybe we'll get to it, because like it is an interesting
we can't
story.
Do the whole process. The whole process is like an 8-year experience of turmoil.
All of it. There's a lot of things that have led up to this point, but I think it's fair to start about 18 months ago at the start of the 2023-24 season. Joel Embiid comes out of the gates on fire. One of the best regular seasons I have ever personally seen by pretty much every metric. It's one of the best regular seasons of all time up until the injury against the Golden State Warriors on, I believe, like January 31st, late January. And I know he has successful surgery on that MCL on February 6th of 2024.
Yes. And you said it's one of the most impressive regular seasons you've ever seen. That is a good way to phrase it, but it's also too fucking light. Yes. It was one of the greatest regular seasons anybody has ever seen. He was coming off a year before that in which he won the MVP, and people were like, Mickey Mouse, look at him failing the playoffs again. We should have gave that shit to Jokic, make a wish, blah, 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 blah. However you feel about that MVP, don't care. Not here to litigate that. But his PR was at an all-time low after another playoff loss. And he came out so unbelievably dominant the season after that he was unquestionably going to win the MVP despite the lack of PR, despite the fact that people feel like he stole one the year prior. He was that dominant. He was averaging more points than he was minutes played. That is Wilt Chamberlain territory. There has not been 5 better scoring seasons in the history of the NBA than what we saw before the injury from Joel Embiid.
Yeah. God damn it. Like, I try to, we put on a mild face for this, but like bearing my soul for a moment, it's so frustrating that no one will remember it. Like, it's literally, I would say like 40% of the NBA Twitter has already forgotten it, much less your dad or the guy that you sit down next to at the sports bar to talk about, or whoever. Nobody's gonna like be like best scoring seasons you've ever seen. Joel Embiid last year, like, it immediately springs to mind for me. It's one of the most undeniable dominant seasons up until that injury that like I've ever fucking borne witness to. And
and you say it's gonna bother you that people aren't gonna remember that season. If we're getting on our soapbox, let's get on the fucking soapbox, because I feel a lot more perturbed by this, because it bothers the shit out of me that not only will that season be forgotten, I hope time changes this. But as of now, it feels like he's going to be forever discredited and like looked down upon.
Yeah.
When reality is he should be viewed the same way you view any 90s, 80s, 70s, whatever superstar that was robbed because of injury. He should be viewed in a very similar way to Bill Walton, to Brandon Roy, Derrick Rose, Grant Hill, T-Mac, whoever you view as your idealistic, oh, he would have done so much crazy shit if he didn't get hurt. Joel Embiid is the same exact way. You can point to some playoff moments, I'm sure, that were his fault.
He's not perfect.
He's not perfect. 80% of his playoff failures are injury related. Everybody has, for the last 7 years of dominance, pretended they don't know that and pretended that he's just terrible and called him the craziest names, the most insane media ridicule. He's been called out of his name. His fucking toughness, manhood, everything has been talked down upon. Like he's just bitch made, not capable of handling pressure, soft, all these things.
Well, specifically with the playoff point, it's like
exactly
if you hone in on a lot of these bad moments, and there were bad moments and there were flaws in his game. I think the last year, the portion that we're specifically glazing, he was the most complete basketball player he ever was, and he was not that at every moment that he came up short in the postseason. But a lot of those playoff shortcomings, you're like, hey, can we like rewind the film 20 minutes, and then wouldn't you know, 20 minutes ago, Pascal Siakam fucking elbowed him in the face off the top row, or like his finger was out of its socket or something, and so it's not that like. It's not that he was perfect. It's not that he was even playing at an acceptable level for a guy who's in MVP voting or leading the league in scoring or whatever. But it's just, I feel so confident in the way his development as a player was trending to kind of fill the problems in his game. And we're never really going to get to see that because of the way his body is failing him.
And he'll just forever be not respecting the way he does because all the reasons you said, facts. Some players get benefit of the doubt,
baby.
Some players get benefit of the doubt in their struggles, and some players get proper context applied because they're liked. People decided he's not liked, so we gave him the most negative view we possibly could in every situation. Zero grace was given, and he's been the most hated superstar of like that I can remember in a long time for some good reasons. Sure, some people, like if you're a Knicks fan, I understand why you still hold some turmoil from last year's playoffs. I get it. But overall, I think he will go down as the most just disrespected, underappreciated is probably the better word than disrespected. Just overlooked and underappreciated star. Because I don't feel like there's been 20 talents in NBA history that are better than him at his peak.
Well, it's especially frustrating because as like, I don't know if you felt this way also, but like watching Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid all go from like promising, interesting, high ceiling young players and watching all three of them, you know, snowball into these best in the world level talents that we saw each of them become. It really felt like at every step we were moving towards like an 8-year period that would be defined by this trio of players and their relationship with each other and how each of them kind of like took turns winning MVPs and overcoming postseason difficulties and eventually winning a championship. And it just like, it feels like there's like this hole in the trio where at their apex, like you were really splitting hairs. Like it's what you prefer in a player personally that leads you to picking Jokic or Embiid or Giannis over Embiid or Embiid over Jokic or whatever. There's just like no three of them play the same way, but all three of them hit these similar heights. And I don't think that's how history is going to remember it as at all.
I hope it does though, because you're right. It got limited to more like a 5-year run than 8. In the same way that the early 2010s were kind of defined by the rise of these perimeter players that changed what a lead ball handler can be in Steph Curry, James Harden, and LeBron and KD. Obviously, the timelines of when the career started are kind of muddy, but for that like 5-year run, those are the players.
12 years prior. Was
exactly.
So
but
good.
You know, it was the age of like the rise of the heliocentric term, and like guards can be your best player. In the case of LeBron and KD, they are forwards. But, you know, especially LeBron, all intents and purposes, guard. That was the defining part of that era. The latter half of the 2010s, early 2020s was defined by the most talented, versatile group of big men we've ever seen with these three guys. Like they reinvented
really
the league to make it big men centric.
It really felt like the position caught up skill wise. Where when you talk about the Harden and the Steph moment, and the KD moment or whatever, that's when you're talking about DeAndre Jordan All NBA first team type shit. Just like, you know, good players, but there was guys making all NBA teams for the center position that weren't like, they were like knocking on top 15 conversations. And now when you're looking at these guys, the all NBA, you know, big men slots are like the premier players in the world. They're the best in the world. And so, it just feels like Embiid's role in all of this should have gone differently. And it's very disappointing.
Yeah.
And so,
so returning to the timeline, all of this was the case, and it was like Nirvana, where we saw the best version, where you said it feels like we're splitting hairs. At this time, last season before the injury, the hairs were split in Joel Embiid's favor. He was playing at the rate of being the best of the three, despite Nikola Jokic having a season that goes on to win MVP, being the peak of his powers too. There was like an argument like, holy shit, Joel Embiid's finally playing at a rate that like you can look at him and say, you are currently outplaying Nikola Jokic, who is potentially the greatest offensive player potentially ever. Joel Embiid, you are going band for band with him production wise.
Yes. Which, and again, the
injury comes.
Yeah. So he gets MCL surgery on February 6th, and then on April 25th, so he returns 7 games before the end of the season after the MCL injury. So he gets in.
That return is worth talking about, because he could have been out for the whole season, but he decided to come back 7 games before the season ended in a way that was a little bit controversial, right? Because he elected to do a surgery that allowed him to have a quicker recovery time, potentially at the expense of long-term health. Yeah. I'm not a doctor, you know, believe it or not. I don't have that much medical expertise. But the example that kept getting brought up at the time was kind of, there is a procedure that will keep him out for the playoffs. There's no shot he's returning, but the longevity on that is a lot more promising. And then there was the procedure that Dwayne Wade had on his MCL in the mid 2000s that gets you back a lot quicker. You know, if you want to be there for the postseason, you could elect to do this. And then, you know, in 2 years and 3 years, shit does not look as bright for you, especially as a 7 foot, 300-pound man. And here we are. He did the ladder and came back on time. And this is very emblematic of the Joel Embiid experience, and part of why he's so nuanced and how the critiques kind of relate to that. He always does what he can to fight through pain and get himself on the court. You know, he has a label of being soft and always injured. He should not deserve the label of softness by any means, because he plays through everything he can. And in this case, we're starting the timeline here because it feels to me like this was the piece pulled out of the Jenga tower of his health that really started the cascading effect of the fall. This decision to come back early brought us to the point now where 8 months later it became a problem.
With all the other things, you look at it, and doctors would be like, hey, you know, you do your rehab, you'll probably be back at 100%. And there was moments where it was like, hey, Embiid's body is reacting weird to the rehab or whatever. But this is the first moment where it's like you're at a crossroads about, you know, presence versus longevity. And we elected to go with the present. And I think it's a testament to what you're talking about, his toughness and his desire to play. He comes back as soon as possible. He's back 7 games before the end of the regular season. They get into a first round matchup against the New York Knicks. And on April 25th, 2024, the same day he drops 50 points on the New York Knicks in a playoff game, he is diagnosed with Bell's palsy. Half of his face is like paralyzed. There was famous clips of him shooting free throws, blinking with one side of his face. He was like talking with his hood up in interviews because it was all very mysterious. And so he's going through that to give Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein 50 points. That's fucking grit, dude. That's toughness.
And, you know, and he gave those 50 points in the mostly 3 quarters. And in the fourth quarter, he famously did not perform well. They lost that game. They lost the series because the narrative being he could have performed in the fourth quarters. Now, a week ago, we get a quote from him that he's talking about in this current season, you know, the year after, his body doesn't allow him to perform for 4 quarters. He's like, I can give you 3 fourth quarter. Maxey, you better fucking tighten your shoestrings. You got to take over for me. We look back now, hearing that comment, we look back to this playoff series in which, like we said, he came back early with the procedure that allowed him to get back on the court. you very clearly see he could not give you 4 quarters in that time either. That he was really trying to get out the mud and perform as best as he could. But his body was giving out still in that series. You could see it.
Yes, and a lot of people, a lot of detractors would say, okay, give me the first and the second quarter and the fourth quarter, or give me the first and the third and the fourth and sit out the second or whatever. Get your rest before it's the most important moments of the game. And
It's not that simple.
My counterpoint to that is that the 76ers roster, and this is why a lot of people were confused about why he came back so damn quickly, that Sixers roster was not good enough to buy him any time on the bench. Every time he sat down in that series, whatever lead they had or whatever deficit they were in either completely collapsed or expanded immediately. Maxey, Tobias Harris, whoever the fuck you want to talk about on that Sixers roster, nobody really held up Joel Embiid into like, hey, take a breath, big man. It was always like, hey, get back as soon as you can.
People love to look in hindsight and apply things with the most like A plus B equals C logic, where, okay, you can only give 3 quarters, play the ones that matter.
Yeah.
The human body doesn't quite work that simple. Every game is different. He doesn't go in knowing, okay, I have exactly 24 minutes and I'll be good. Some nights he might feel a little bit better.
That's how
some
Kawhi
nights
works, though, probably.
Yeah, apparently. He's a robot. But
I got 24, I'm going to bed.
Some nights he still feels poorly, but it's okay. You just can't tell because he's making jumpers. Like, every night, every day is different in how his knee reacts. It's not so simple that we can look back and be like, you should have did this. I promise you, if they could have did that in that way, they would have done it. But they also didn't know what they know now. Like, there's so much more context involved of what makes the human body of an athlete complicated.
So back to the timeline, the Bell's palsy thing, that's part of it. That's a testament to the grit. If you watch that series or you go back and watch it, his knee was not right. He was wearing a brace that like his leg sleeve barely fit over. It would routinely start bleeding in the middle of games, and so then he makes it all the way through that series. With like he finishes it, they lose, whatever. He drops 50, blah blah blah. Then he goes
clearly not 100%.
Yeah, visually just not 100%. He goes and plays in the Olympics through a lot of injury concerns. He is healthy. It's not like he goes into the Serbia or the France game and like re-aggravates his knee or anything. Honestly, in very limited run in the Olympics, he looked really solid and he looked pretty spry.
When the Olympics ended, we had no health concerns at the time. It felt like everything's fine. We're like, okay, Kawhi didn't play because his health injuries. Joel Embiid stayed. You know, it seems to be all good. We had zero idea in our mind that we should go into the next season thinking about injury at the time of the Olympics ending.
Yeah. And so then we get to training camp of the 2024-25 season, and Embiid reveals in an interview that he is not scrimmaging 5-on-5. He's not really doing full contact stuff. And that's pretty concerning because the regular season starts 15 days later and he misses the first 9 games.
Exactly. And the important part of this is it came completely out of nowhere. Out of the blue at training camp, he's like, oh yeah, I'm not healthy. And we're like, what the fuck are you talking about? We had no idea this was a problem.
What are we doing? You were balling on Paris.
Where did this come from? There was so much shock and like lack of information out there that it was like, oh God, this came out of nowhere. The alarm bells are starting to ring. We know now that it was not an issue of a new injury. On 11/22/2024, Embiid plays 4 games in 9 days before the beginning of treatment for his knee swelling in his left knee. He came back after missing his first 9 games, plays those 4 games, has to go out immediately again because we now know there's no injury. His knee just cannot handle wear and tear without swelling. There's no structural issue. He didn't hurt his MCL. He didn't hurt the joint, hurt the bone, the ACL, anything of the sort. It's simple wear and tear makes the body give out. He can't handle it without swelling occurring and preventing him from moving like he once did. Yeah. It's like he's 50 years old and can't move around without being like, my hip hurts.
Yeah.
We've reached that point where the wear and tear is built up and he just cannot handle simple workload, even without structural issue.
And that's led to like a lot of, this feels like it's been not just an injured season, a mysterious season where because it's not like this concrete injury that they could point to and give updates to, a lot of the reports are just like, it's managing something. He's missing because he's managing.
Hard to understand.
Yeah. And so then after all that goes down, the next injury he accrues, I believe, is spraining his foot on Christmas Day, which he plays through the Christmas game, and then he plays in 6 of their next 7 or 8 games before officially being ruled out with the foot sprain. That then snowballs into his left foot being hurt, his left knee, the swelling comes back. He misses 15 consecutive games. And that kind of brings us up to speed where we are now.
Yes. So to TLDR, what Jack just said, he hurt his foot on Christmas, missed 6 games. In the time in which he's recovering to come back, it's revealed it's not just his foot, it's also his knee. Everything's coming together. Again, there's a lot of mystery involved still. So Sixers fans, maybe we're getting something wrong that you guys have seen some reports and details that we're omitting. Let us know. This is very hard to keep up with. So if we are forgetting stuff, please let us know.
There's only been a trillion injury reports this season. Like
exactly.
I felt like I was combing through government files trying to find this shit. It's just like
what Jack's describing is they realize these injuries are cascading together, and one injury is starting a chain reaction, and there's a lot wrong that he cannot stay on the court. It's all coming together because maybe it seems like that surgery he went through the previous season that we chronicled, he came back early at the risk of later making the long-term health of the knee poor. That's where we're at now. The health of the knee is poor. It cannot handle anything. Simply playing 6 out of 8 games makes every facet of his leg give up on itself and just cannot hold up in any regard. And that's how we are where we open the episode. It feels like the Joel Embiid prime is over because if you can't play 6 out of 8 games without your leg just inflaming and not letting you stay on the court, you can't be relied
on. And honestly, it's like a hobbled.
Way.
It's literally hobbled. Like his knee is not good, but like sometimes previous years with maybe Kawhi Leonard or something, Kawhi would pop out and you'd get like 6 games where he's 30 points per game on 70% true shooting, and it's like, hey, if this guy is there, I could see how the Clippers would do this or that. The games that Joel Embiid is playing in, it is like visually just the worst version of him that you've seen. Where like he can't move effectively. He's really bad on like defensive rotations. He's focusing on his playmaking because his ability to like do all the stuff he was dominant with as a scorer is really hindered. Like he was dominant through agility. It's not like he was like a slow kind of plodding Jokic type scorer. He was beating guys by moving in a way that a 7-footer normally doesn't move, and it's a lot harder now.
He's literally the greatest mix of all time of size and agility. People don't understand. I think it was Possible Chairs on TikTok who pointed this out. He's 280 pounds. Moves the way he does in the perimeter, shooting mid-range jumpers, attacking off the dribble. You look at people who have dealt with similar injuries of different body types, like Bill Walton. 210 pounds. He is 70 pounds heavier than Bill Walton and moves around 10 times as much on the perimeter. His body type, the only close parallel is Shaquille O'Neal at 320 pounds at his peak. Even Patrick Ewing, who was a large man of similar comparison, 240 pounds. So at his biggest, he's 40 pounds less than Joel Embiid's reported weight. The mixture of size and movement is unparalleled, so it is no surprise that the body eventually couldn't hold up to get us where we are today.
It's pretty sad. And it's I don't know, not to like fucking pivot, but when you think about Shaq playing for 20 years, like this contextualizes that as a miracle. It's insane. Like the body is not built to like move
he also wasn't doing hezzy tweens on the perimeter. Like it was just different. But speaking of where we are today.
Okay. I was going to say final score like 76 to 85 or something in the mid 2000s. And it's like the possessions.
Different game. We mentioned all year, we've been talking about different shows that it feels like the Joel Embiid experience is coming to an end. It feels like his body's cooked. In recent days, we're getting a little bit of confirmation about that. It's been reported now that they're exploring surgery options that include potential treatments of a meniscus replacement surgery, which sounds crazy, new meniscus, but that's the most tame of all these options. Second option, low dose radiation. I don't even know what the fuck that means for a knee, but And third, an osteotomy. I don't know how you say that.
I think that's right.
However you pronounce it. This involves them breaking his fucking hip to reset the placement of his bones in a way that will heal and alleviate pressure on his knee joint. That is where we're at. We are in experimental surgery. We're sending him to Germany like Kobe Bryant.
Where it's like, I'm going to put a leech on your knee and we're going to bleed you for 45 minutes and then you'll be good to go. And it's like, okay. Like this seems like something in 20 years we're going to look back and be like, what the fuck were we doing to this guy? You cut his fucking leg off, dude? What the hell? And so,
we're joking again. But they're at that point where they clearly also feel this way. And the current view set is, what do we do to make it so we can maybe have a long-term view that maybe we get another year eventually, right? Like he's incredibly cooked. And now you're caught up on how we got here with Joel Embiid. And, the other side of this, of why we're saying their future is so fucked, Paul George also not playing well, given a 4-year contract. That's how we got here. Yeah. You have everything went wrong in the Joel Embiid injury recovery, and it feels like it's for good. Paul George is cooked. Everything's bad.
It is very funny to be we cooked 20 minutes on like how the fuck did Joel Embiid, one of the NBA's greatest talents of all time, fall to these these depths or whatever, and then Paul George is like yeah, it's just like no, he's cooked. It's like it's just normal shit. Like he's just it's just natural.
Yeah. It is normal though. Yeah, you're right. Like he's old and he's dealt with his own injuries of himself. Like you said, he came back
you
from
think about his leg back in the day. Like that was crazy. Yeah.
Like there's no really in terms of on-court product. I don't find there would be any reason to fault Paul George or to deep dive into why it's surprising. Mm-hmm. He's old and the injuries have caught up. It's really as simple as that. Yeah. We can laugh at things he said.
Wish the Sixers had known that before they signed him.
Yeah, and honestly, none of us. I mean, there was signs of decline last year, but how can you know when the fall is going to happen? It was I didn't have a problem. I thought it was cool. They had the third star who's good at off-ball scoring, so-and-so. Like, if they're all on the court at the same time, they should be dominant. Didn't work out that way, and that happens a lot with aging stars. You kind of have to just hope that you get Brooklyn Kevin Durant and not Philadelphia Paul George.
Yeah. That's tough. It's tough. So, what do they do now is really the question. Where do we move from
That's the question. How can we salvage this mess? So, in this conversation of what they can do to get out of this, we have to start with the most nearsighted thinking. They have to motherfucking tank like they've never tanked before. Lose as many games as you can. Because in the 2025 NBA draft, their first round pick is currently owed to the OKC Thunder. Sam Presti has once again gotten in.
Of course it is. Where else would it be? If there's like a 40% chance if someone owes someone a pick now, it's like Sam Presti being like, hey, I'm coming to collect on that, by the way. Can you slide that my way? Yeah.
Yeah. He's like Omar in The Wire. Just, Omar coming. Yeah. And Sam Presti with the fucking switch.
Sawed off, baby. Hell yeah.
In a trench coat ready to come and take your assets. Robin season.
Okay.
But it's owed to OKC. It is top 6 protected. Simply put, they need to get that goddamn pick. They absolutely cannot let this season end with a pick in the top 10 going to another team. If there's any silver line to this, it needs to be you found a way to tank your way to a top 5 pick and you got a premier talent to come in and try to give you something of note to guide you to the next era. Yeah. If that does not happen, you are unimaginably fucked.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of the stances that the team has publicly taken lately about like Embiid, I want to play, we can make a push, we could be the 10 seed or whatever, we could make the play-in, and all of it to me is just like, guys, that is not the move, please. Like if Philadelphia, if you're like in competitive games anymore, and I was a fan, I would be upset. The time to win has long passed. Like if you don't get this pick, you're essentially locked into running it back next season with what is already a disastrous team, except you're probably losing a couple of your only capable role players as well, Guerschon Yabusele and a couple other people. And so, they have to bottom out as hard as they can in Eastern Conference where nothing is guaranteed. Like the bottom half of the East, everybody is going to be trying to lose from now on.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that we say that the tank this year, it's not just like be bad, enter a rebuild, because they can't really do that because they have a very interesting pick situation. Like I said, this pick is top 6 protected. If they manage to get top 5 and keep their own pick, next year their pick goes to OKC instead and it's top 4 protected. Let's say they find a way to be top 4 again and they keep it, right? 2 years in a row of top end picks, that's a good way to start a rebuild next to Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes to OKC again the next year, 2027, top 4 protected. If it doesn't convey at that point, it becomes a second round pick. The hard part is they currently also owe a 2027 pick to the Brooklyn Nets. And this pick is set up that if the OKC pick continues to get pushed forward year after year, the Brooklyn Nets pick will also get pushed forward, is my understanding of the protections, that it will be conveyed 2 years after the OKC pick. So basically, if they don't give their pick to OKC this year, their next 3 or 4 years of picks are tied up in protections and they can't do a lot flexibility-wise. So they really have to tank this year and keep that pick and then probably convey it next year is the best course of action.
And I mean, additionally, even through all of that, even if none of that was really there, the ability to rebuild it's like I guess you could rebuild with these Paul George and Embiid contracts, but you're looking at these contracts being done when the guy you draft this year is like 25 years old, maybe. like you're just so far from really being able to move them as like expiring money or something. So unless you get a resurgence where somebody would buy on them, you're doing a rebuild while you're paying $100 million a year to like, I don't know, bad or cooked or whatever kind of you want to call them players. It's a bizarre situation.
Yeah. And so I guess that's the next point to talk about. Clearest point to do right now is tank and keep your pick for this season to not have it be a total waste, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate these guys? Because you probably can't trade Paul George. That's going to be hard to make somebody take on his contract.
I mean, would you trade for Paul George?
No, I'm not an idiot. And you certainly can't trade Joel Embiid.
Get Nico on the phone right now. Oh my God. Yo, call him up.
Give him AD. You definitely also can't trade Joel Embiid because in the same way you don't want Paul George's contract because his lack of availability, lack of production that matches that number he gets. You damn sure don't want Joel Embiid, who can't play 5 games in a row.
And that's
so you're not going to turn him into a contender.
I've seen, and like, I don't know, it's first take or whatever, but like that's the thing I have seen big network TV guys kind of spinning is like what I would do if I'm the Sixers, I would make Embiid available. I would do what no one expects. I'd put him on the trading block. And I'm like,
to who? Shanghai?
Yeah.
Who's going to want Joel Embiid?
Who is picking that up? Like, what are you thinking? Like it's just a contract that like you don't want to lose. You don't like it's the caliber of guy that you're so emotionally invested in, blah, blah, blah. But like nobody is gonna like realistically give you anything to take that guy on.
So they have to enter a interesting phase where one, you need to get Joel Embiid the surgery he needs to put him in a space where maybe after a long and grueling recovery, he can have a last stretch of his career where he can provide you a healthy season or two, right?
Mm-hmm.
You also got to ride that fine line of doing that while also quasi-rebuilding around Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and whoever they can draft this year if they keep that pick. And teams have done this before, with aging stars who are kind of cooked and have to like enter a different phase of their career. But it's really difficult and really requires a good organization that can kind of balance the PR and locker room just priorities of these two timelines and the fact that everybody knows we're kind of fucked, but we're trying to make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult, but not impossible.
Are the Sixers that level of organization to you?
Oh my God, I don't know.
Well, like I just feel like at every turn, either something insane is coming out of Sixers locker room, or they are making a roster decision that's just like, yo. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe not even unjustifiable is the idea, but a roster decision that at the end doesn't end up working, where it's like they pick up, I don't know, Al Horford just jumped into my mind. And like when they snagged Horford, it's like, okay, it's a good move. And by the end of it, they're attaching picks to get off of his contract. And so, yeah, I don't have a ton of faith in the Sixers organization to be, I don't know, like if gentle is the right word, handle this with any amount of tact. It's just, I don't have faith in them to do anything like that.
Yeah, well, that's they're gonna have to figure that out. I don't know either. I don't know who to have faith in this organization if Daryl Morey can see this plane to its landing spot, but they need some kind of soft landing, some kind of soft reboot of their franchise. They have to keep Joel Embiid in there, but like deprioritize him, and like build around the margins and get you to a point where by the time you're 3 years from now and him and Paul George can come off the books, you have like the next era in place, like Tyrese Maxey's young, Jared McCain, hopefully he can make a leap and be a like legit close to a building block or whatever.
Yeah, I thought he was like when you saw McCain play this season, he displayed like skills that A, he wasn't maximizing, and B, really changed the game as far as like his ability to move and shoot and get to the rim. Like he was as a rookie, an offensive player that, I don't know, before this season, Embiid had that quote where he's like, McCain's been our best player. And everyone was like, that's cool. That's interesting. And then you get into the season, it's like low key, he kind of has been, or he was for stretches.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think he can become like a Desmond Bane level player who's not a year-by-year all-star, but he's like one of the best non-all-stars. And maybe he can have like an all-star ceiling. I don't know. I think there's a good chance Jared McCain becomes a good building block for them. So, yeah, you want to have him develop whoever they can draft this year to fit alongside him and Maxey. Like, you kind of got to just make the best of it and do almost like a Brooklyn Nets type rebuild where you just like really maximize medium tier assets and make all the small moves you can. But it's different because now you have Joel Embiid in the door, and when he's healthy, he's gonna like get you 25 a game. Like,
I'd be so pissed if you're like having a good tanking year, and Embiid's like, "I got 25 straight games for you guys," and it just like ruins. He's just like back for a second. But yeah, overall, the future. I mean, that's why we're making this video. It's pretty grim. Like, there's not a ton of ways that you could kind of be cute or be savvy and like wiggle your way out of this outside of a genuine idiot picking up the phone and like taking on some of these contracts. Like that's the only way out of some of these pickles that Philadelphia is in. So it just feels like you gotta eat a shit sandwich for a little bit, I guess. Just like
long story short, they're kind of fucked and there's no easy way. There's nothing we can point to be like, this will fix it. The title of this video is not how to fix the 76ers. It's like something along the lines of how to cope with the fact that death is looming for your fandom. And that's what we're trying to talk about. Is like, find silver linings in your misery because the misery will be here nonetheless.
Yeah. Silver lining. It was McCain, but now it's like, I don't even know. It's like Ricky Council. Damn, bro. He's got something.
Hell yeah. Gershon Yabusele. Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. I don't know. Do you have any games for us to play?
I have several.
Hey, there we go. Let's get
it. First off, on the topic of Paul George, let's look back on the 2024 free agency class because it was not the most exciting. You know, it wasn't the biggest names involved, but there was a few headlining deals. Several people that have made all-star teams signed somewhere else in free agency this year. I want to name you a 2024 NBA free agency signing. You rate it from 1 to 10 based on how well it's aged so far.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with the obvious one. Paul George to the 76ers.
Oh, 1 through 10. This is like a 2. I'll leave room for something to get worse.
Generous.
But like that's generous. I mean, between his actual level of play and just the kind of, I don't know, you would expect like a minimum of veteran presence in the locker room, like a guy who's been around the league for a long time, kind of steadying the ship in that regard. It doesn't, like, we just got that quote from him today where he's like, I'm taking a break from podcasting to be serious about basketball. You want him to steady the ship?
You want him to steady the ship? Every time he touches a mic and opens his mouth, he rocks the boat even harder, creates all the waves he can.
Yeah. Every time I talk to Daryl Morey, he sounds stupid, but you know, like, hey, I'm not in charge, so I'll lay off him.
This is a 0 out of 10. His play just this year would make it like a 3 out of 10, but the fact that it's a 4-year deal and he's only going to get older, this is one of the worst contracts in the NBA immediately. 0 out of 10.
Yeah. Hey, if you gave him a no trade clause, you'd be the Wizards. So, you know, you at least avoided that, I suppose.
Okay. KCP to the Magic.
I will give this a 5 out of 10. It feels like, you know, he's a good defender and he's played that side of the ball pretty effectively, but the Magic were desperate for three-point shooting last season. He came in and has had pretty decisively one of his worst three-point shooting seasons ever. We're over halfway into the season and it's been that way and I don't expect it to change. So 5 out of 10.
Yeah. Hasn't worked out, but it's not so terrible long term. Like, you could imagine a world where he bounces back, but he has not given them anything that they want. Like, it has not worked out in the short term.
He's going to make you throw up. Damn. You said he's disgusting. I would say with him at least, when you talk about Paul George providing like veteran presence or whatever, in the Magic locker room, KCP is a guy where it's like, hey, young team, we get a fucking vet in here to kind of establish good habits and set us up to be successful in the postseason or whatever. I'm a lot happier with his contributions in those areas, and the Magic are a team that also needed them more. So it makes it a little better in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks.
I'll give this a 7 out of 10. You know, I was low as shit on this when it happened. I did not like it because I thought the defense was going to be much worse. They have built a very high level defense around Klay Thompson while featuring him prominently on the other end. And they've just essentially brought him in to be like, hey, we know you can't dribble. We know the burst is cooked. We know the other side of the ball is not that good. You can still shoot that basketball. Yep. And that's all we need you to do.
Yeah, it's a perfectly fine signing. 7 out of 10 is cool. It's a 0 out of 10 for Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson had to choose between the prospects of playing with LeBron James or Luka Doncic, and the motherfuckers teamed up without him.
I didn't even think about it from that angle. That's so funny.
He introduced two friends, and they turned on him and kicked him out of the friend group. It's crazy. He got the worst of both worlds. Shout out Anthony Davis. I hope he gets healthy and makes Klay Thompson's life better. But right now, he's running around out there with little help to set him open for shots.
That's especially funny because, you know, like LeBron and Klay go back to, like, they've played each other so much that it's not like they're outside of each other's spheres. So Klay will probably see LeBron at some point in the future at some function or something and be like, yo, my life was so cool for a second. Why'd you do that, dude?
Yeah, like they played last night, and he probably just watched LeBron and Luka just dapping each other up, laughing it up, having fun, just like that meme of Squidward upstairs in his house watching SpongeBob and Patrick have fun down low. Yeah. That's Klay every day.
Damn. Sorry, Klay. But hey, Anthony, you got Max Christie now. The future's looking bright.
Shout out. Last but not least, DeMar DeRozan to the Kings.
Oh, I will give this like a 3 out of 10. I really don't like it.
I don't even want to grade this one. I don't even know why. I don't even know why I brought it up. It's just sad.
Well, it's especially in the context of Zach LaVine going there, where already it was like, hey, we're the mid-range team. Let's bring in the mid-range. Let's bring in the definitive mid-range player of this generation. And then you have the opportunity to bring in Zach LaVine, who has been for most of this season, incredible high-volume three-point shooter, except DeMar really fucks with his game. And so he's actively limiting this sick-ass asset that you just went and got.
Yeah. And it's not that DeMar is this like problem. He's not bad. It's just that in the context of knowing you're going to in the future get Zach LaVine, and we saw how terrible that duo was together for like trying to be relevant in the NBA, it just feels bad because if they had Zach LaVine in the door now without DeMar and they use that money somewhere else, I feel so much better about the fit of this whole core.
Hey, you know how the Bulls were in the play-in in the conference where everybody's winning like 35 games? We're going to reunite those two when you need 50 wins to be the 9 seed. That's how we're going to cook, baby. I like it.
General rule of thumb, if you see the Chicago Bulls do something, do the most opposite thing you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, that's actually so funny. Be like, yo, the Bull, okay, we don't want that guy. Get he's off our radar then.
Yeah, Domantas Sabonis is going to travel back in time, looking through, trying to talk to his past self, talk to the GM. He's going to be banging on the bookshelf.
Murph, don't do the trade, Murph. Don't do it. That's funny. Oh my God.
Okay, that's all that. Next thing we're going to do, let's do an NBA vibe check.
Okay.
I'm going to name you an NBA team. You tell me how good their vibes are 1 to 10.
All right. They call me the vibes doctor. So I should.
Nobody's ever called you that shit.
They call me the vibes doctor. So I should be able to handle this pretty well.
Okay. All right, Doc. First off, we'll start with the team of the day. 76ers. What are you rating their vibes?
This has got to be a 0. This is the benchmark for the worst vibes in the league, where it's just like on top of all of this other stuff, then you like there's no silver lining. Everything is coming down at the same time. Paul George hurts or stinks or podcasting. Embiid, definitive player of your like team's last decade. He's probably cooked for the rest of his career. Maxey didn't even get to be on an all-star team despite having a pretty sick individual season. Jared McCain gets hurt. Everything stinks. Everything's sad and gray.
Yeah, their vibes are so bad that I think we need to switch scales. We're not giving them a number here. I think we need to talk about what stage of grief the fan base should be in. 1 through 7.
Okay. Probably acceptance. I feel like the past few years with Embiid where it's like, hey, just get him to the playoffs. It'll be all right. That's probably been denial. And so anger or acceptance is cool for them.
Something like that.
Yeah.
All right, next team. We got the Cleveland Cavaliers.
So if the Sixers are a 0, I'll give the Cavaliers an 8. I feel like there's maybe...
Really?
You got 10? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, of course I do. The vibes are all-time high. Have you seen how much Darius Garland is smiling? Have you seen how happy he is to watch Evan Mobley make the leap to being a top 15 player in the league this year? Like, he's been amazing. The whole team is coming together. Kenny Atkinson has changed their fucking lives. Everything is going so swell for them. All their pockets are full of sunshine.
Oh, okay. All right. Little music reference. I don't know. I just feel like maybe For whatever reason, I'm just missing something on them. I love the season individually. It's great. I like all of their all-stars. I like Ty Jerome. I like fucking DeAndre Hunter now. It's all sick, but I'm sticking with 8. There's something off. I don't know what it is. I'm the doctor. So you're going to argue with the doctor, man? I don't know.
All right, Doc. Next up, the OKC Thunder.
Now this is a 10. Oh my God. This is a 10, baby. You could tell because they do cool huddles in the post-game press conference.
Yeah.
They're all barking and stuff.
How many teams have vibes so good that they have a star that they can all collectively glaze and it be acceptable?
I don't know. I don't see Donovan Mitchell doing that. Meat off is one thing, but the aura off, it's a different level. Yeah. I mean, the Thunder, their vibes are so good that their second best young player, really, their DPOY level big man, missed most of the season and nobody cared. Everybody still had a great time until he returned. They didn't miss a step. And then they're just having a better time. So yeah, it's a 10 out of 10.
Everything's wonderful in OKC, which Oklahoma needs a W. Nothing else.
I guess.
Particularly good there. Everything else about Oklahoma sucks.
Shout out to prairies as a biome. Shout out to there's probably like bison there or something.
Shout out to prairies as a biome.
but like I don't even know what else is going on in Oklahoma, man.
Shout out to tall grass conceptually.
Yeah, hey baby, that's what I'm saying. Shout out to panhandles. Huge moment for panhandles, but beyond that, I just don't know.
The Phoenix Suns.
Oh, brother.
It might be the only team you could think of that have worse vibes than the 76ers. The 76ers are just an acceptance. They're just fucked forever.
Yeah.
The Suns should not be here. Everybody's healthy. Everybody should be playing well.
Yeah.
They don't have any injury excuses. They're just beyond pitiful.
Yeah. If we had to give the Sixers their own tier, I will say the Suns are as low as you can go before getting your own tier. It's just like much more within the traditional realm of dog shit team where they took this huge swing and then they've just made a bunch of subsequent moves where everything's gotten worse. And now, I mean, they're losing to like playing teams, lottery teams. They're fucking up the Toronto Raptors like draft odds because they're so bad. It's crazy.
The vibes are bad on the team. You can kind of tell. Kevin Durant's Twitter and social media presence is like Groundhog Day, where you can see the vibes of his team and get a real feel for it. He's crashing out, arguing with people on Twitter.
This video right now. You're going to get us in
He's
trouble,
arguing people
dude.
on Twitter right now. He's arguing with local media about the radio broadcaster setting dumb narratives. He's on Draymond Green's podcast talking about why he completely sunned the front office and said, "Don't trade me." They're talking about like he's going to get traded this summer. Everything is just hilarious.
Yeah. With KD, I don't know. There was one I saw back and forth where he was arguing with the Suns fan, and his last response was just like, "All right, you got it." And so to like be a Suns fan who argues with KD in this moment, I wonder how you feel when he gets traded, where you're like, "Oh, was I like 1% of this? Did I do anything? Did I make him mad enough to like text his agent and be like, we're done here in the off season?"
Last but not least, the Los Angeles Lakers.
I'll give them a 5 out of 10. That's what I mean. Oh, the Los Angeles Lakers have the best vibes in basketball because Luka Doncic is going to be one of the best players on the planet for the next 10 years. And they got him for a 7-footer who was on his way out of his prime.
And what else?
Austin Reeves has the best whistle in basketball. LeBron James entering his 4th prime. Dorian Finney-Smith, one of the best role players in the league. Rui Hachimura is so handsome. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean the vibes rock. The Lakers should get their own tier in the opposite direction, probably.
I'm just glad when I'm not the one who has to say it.
Hey, no, the vibes are so good that Jackson, like the front court rotation, is genuine ass, and nobody really cares. It's like,
it doesn't matter. They're so nice.
We could be good with it, and then in the off season. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Someone will walk
JJ Redick, I called you Pat Riley in the summer, halfway joking. I'm no longer joking. You are the prince who was promised. You're a prodigy. You're going to lead us forever. Luka's him. You're him. LeBron's still him. 10 out of 10 vibes.
JJ, start wearing suits, bro. Bring suits back. You'll launch in aura. It'll be crazy. Yeah.
You'll be real suave.
All right.
All right, man. Well, that's the end of that segment. That's the end of this episode.
Is that the end of the video? Is us glazing the Lakers? That's so funny. Wow. Oh, that's funny how that works. Okay.
If we're still here, comment JJ Redick. You're literally Pat Riley.
Wow.
And we'll see y'all next week.
I hope people comment that. I hope the 76ers funeral video. Wow, JJ. That's the comments. Oh, that's funny.